Let's start at the top, with what happened on Saturday night. Max Holloway walked into UFC 326 at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas as the BMF champion and the solid betting favorite over Charles Oliveira. He walked out without the belt. Oliveira put on one of the most dominant grappling displays you'll ever see against an elite opponent, landing 5 takedowns and racking up over 20 minutes of control time on the ground. All 3 judges scored it 50-45. It wasn't even close on the cards. Holloway, a guy who had almost flawless takedown defense throughout most of his UFC career, simply could not stop Oliveira from putting him on the canvas round after round. Now, to Holloway's credit, his submission defense held up against one of the greatest submission artists in MMA history, but he never found his rhythm on the feet, and the fight slipped away from him. On Monday night, Holloway released his first statement on social media. He said Saturday night was not his night and apologized to his family, friends, and fans for letting them down. He gave full credit to Oliveira, called him all class, and said there would be no excuses. He also made it clear he is not retiring. He said he's been here before and knows the work he needs to do to get back to where he wants to be. His exact words were, "We are far from done." Holloway's record now sits at 27-9, and he's 2-2 in his last 4 fights. The loss derails what many thought was a path toward the lightweight title shot, but if you know anything about Max Holloway, you know counting him out is a mistake. Now let's move to what might be the biggest drama of the entire week. Jon Jones has officially requested to be released from his UFC contract. This all blew up after the UFC Freedom 250 White House card was announced during the UFC 326 broadcast on Saturday night, and Jones's name was nowhere on it. Jones came out of retirement specifically for this card. He'd been publicly campaigning for a spot for months, and at the UFC 326 post-fight press conference, Dana White didn't just say Jones wasn't on the card, he buried him. White said, and this was his exact energy, never ever ever was Jon Jones even remotely in his mind to fight at the White House. He cited a video of Jones struggling to run during a flag football game, mentioned his arthritis, and essentially said the man is done fighting. On Monday, Jones fired back with a lengthy statement on X. He said his team was in real negotiations with the UFC for a spot on the White House card. He said he even came down from his original asking price and was offered a lowball number in return. He confirmed he has arthritis in his hip, but said that does not mean he cannot fight. And then he asked a very pointed question that I think cuts to the heart of all of this. If he had accepted that lowball offer, would his hip suddenly be fine and he'd be on the card? That logic does not hold up. Jones also revealed he received stem cell treatment last week to get ready for the White House, and that his training camp was literally scheduled to start this week. According to Ariel Helwani's reporting, Jones wanted something in the range of $30 million, which is reportedly what he was previously offered to fight Tom Aspinall last November. The UFC's counter was reportedly around $15 million, which is roughly what they paid boxer Conor Benn for a single fight in Zuffa Boxing last month. Let me translate that for you. The UFC allegedly offered one of the greatest fighters in the history of the sport, a 28-1 legend, the same money they gave a boxer that most casual American fans have never heard of. Jones closed his statement by saying, "If the UFC truly feels like he's done, then he respectfully asks to be released from his contract today. No more spins, no more games, bones out." And here's where the story takes an unexpected turn.
I really do feel for Jon Jones in this situation. I find myself defending Jon, which is not a position that I know that I've ever been in. And when you're Jon Jones, you're 38 years old, coming out and you're saying, like, I can't do this and I've got arthritis and I got these problems in my hips. It's just a tough spot. And I feel for him. I imagine there was a little bit of a pain in the ass behind the scenes, but he had still made it ask, and he's doing a number of great things. And a guy that he smoked in 4 minutes got the opportunity.
Tom Aspinall, the current undisputed UFC heavyweight champion, and a guy who spent over a year trying to get Jones to fight him, actually came to Jones' defense. On the Ariel Helwani show this week, Aspinall said it's crazy to him that the UFC is not giving Jones the financial respect he deserves. He said if anyone in this sport should be getting paid a lot, it should be Jon Jones for everything he's done. And he acknowledged how wild that sounds coming from him given their history. Aspinall pointed out that the UFC offered Jones $30 million to fight him, and asked why they haven't put that same number back on the table. He brought up Conor McGregor as well, and said these are the guys who brought in the revenue for over 10 years, and they need to be getting paid what they deserve. Aspinall also hinted that he sees himself as a $25 million fighter and said he expects to fight in 2026 once his eyes fully heal from the double surgery he had after the Cyril Gane no contest at UFC 321. So, the heavyweight champion is siding with the guy who refused to fight him for a year. That tells you something about how fighters are viewing this situation right now. Speaking of Aspinall, Sean O'Malley does not think it was a smart move for Tom to sign with Eddie Hearn's Matchroom talent agency. For context, Aspinall became the inaugural client of Hearn's newly launched talent management division earlier this month. This is significant because Hearn and Dana White are in an all-out war right now. White's Zuffa Boxing poached Conor Benn from Matchroom with a reported $15 million one-fight deal, and Hearn responded by signing the UFC's heavyweight champion. O'Malley was pretty blunt about it on the Helwani show. He said you don't want to make enemies with the UFC and that having someone manage you, who Dana doesn't really like, doesn't seem very smart. O'Malley said he's not that smart himself, but that's how he sees it. He took the opposite approach, saying he has a good relationship with the UFC and is honored to be on the White House card where he'll fight Ayman Zahabi. It's worth noting that Chael Sonnen also weighed in and said he thinks Aspinall is being used as a pawn in the chess match between Hearn and White.
Why is the UFC not giving Jon the respect he deserves financially? That's crazy to me.
Do you feel like there's a growing sentiment?
For Jon?
No, that the fighters in the UFC aren't getting what they're owed.
Well, if anyone should be getting paid a lot in this sport, it should be Jon Jones for the stuff that he's done.
Meanwhile, Hearn told Helwani that roughly a dozen UFC fighters have already contacted him seeking representation since the Aspinall announcement, and he plans to sign more. So this story is far from over. Now let's pivot to the middleweight division because Sean Strickland is already in fight mode. Strickland took a jab at Khamzat Chimaev on Instagram this week. He posted a photo and wrote that it's been a fun dive weekend but he's back to work. And then added, terrorists to fight and belts to be won. That's Strickland being Strickland. No filter, no subtlety, just straight provocation aimed directly at Chimaev. And whether you love the way he talks or hate it, you can't deny that the Strickland vs Chimaev fight is one of the most anticipated matchups in the division right now. And speaking of Chimaev, new training footage dropped this week from the training lab showing Khamzat working with coach Sam Calavita. The footage showed intense padwork sessions with Calavita calling out combinations and Chimaev looking sharp and explosive. If you followed Chimaev's career, you know that injuries and health issues have been the biggest obstacles standing between him and consistent competition. The fact that he's training hard and looking good right now is a promising sign for anyone who wants to see this fight actually get made. No official announcement yet, but the pieces appear to be moving in the right direction. Now let's talk about a take that's going to surprise some people. Paddy Pimblett, who just lost to Justin Gaethje at UFC 324 back in January in the interim lightweight title fight, actually believes Gaethje can beat Ilia Topuria at the White House. Pimblett said he's got a sneaky suspicion that Gaethje might pull off the upset and surprise everyone. He pointed out that fighting in front of his president in his home country could give Gaethje extra motivation. Pimblett also acknowledged it's a fist fight and it can go either way, and said anyone could beat anyone inside the White House. Now here's the interesting part. Pimblett also said he'd love to fight Charles Oliveira next and believes that fight would end up being a war on the feet. He said everyone talks about Oliveira's grappling being levels above him, and he flat out said he knows it isn't. Whether you agree with Pimblett's assessment or not, at least he's putting himself out there and calling for a top 5 opponent coming off a loss. That takes confidence.
You know what I mean? They're going to come out and they're going to try and take each other's heads off, but everyone's already counting Gaethje out, and we've already learned you can't do that. I don't know, I've got a sneaky suspicion that Gaethje might pull off an upset here and surprise everyone. As you know, it's a fight. It's a fist fight. It can go either way. Anyone could beat anyone. In the White House, he's probably going to have a little bit more motivation to go out there and win because it's in front of his presidents. And
over in the welterweight division, Ian Gary went on a full offensive on Instagram this week. Gary believes he should be the next person to challenge for the welterweight title, reportedly against Islam Makhachev, and he told Michael Morales to sit down. Gary said Morales hasn't done enough to earn a title shot. He pointed out that since his debut at Madison Square Garden, he's racked up 10 wins in the UFC, while Kamaru Usman has had one. Just one. Gary said anyone putting Usman's name in the conversation is on another planet. He also called for a rematch with Shavkat Rakhmonov, saying he wants that fight and telling Shavkat to heal up. And he threw in a note about already beating Carlos Prates and being willing to do it again in Brazil. Say what you want about Ian Gary's personality, but the man is active. He's calling out everyone, and he's building a case for himself one fight at a time. Now let's zoom out because Ariel Helwani had some important things to say about the UFC White House card as a whole, and he was not sugarcoating it. Helwani pointed out a couple of key problems. First, the UFC told everyone this was going to be the greatest card of all time, with 7 to 8 title fights, and that it would be like the Sphere on steroids. Second, the two biggest stars on the card, Ilia Topuria and Alex Pereira, are not fighting the opponents fans actually want to see. Fans want Ilia versus Islam or Arman Tsarukyan. Fans want Alex Pereira versus Jon Jones. And instead, we're getting title fights that are, in Helwani's words, one half of what we want. He said the theme of the UFC right now is that they always deliver one half. Helwani did give the card a 9 out of 10 in a vacuum, calling it the best pay-per-view lineup in a long time, but he acknowledged that the expectations were set so impossibly high that by the time June 14th rolls around, fans are going to feel let down regardless. He also pointed out that Arman Tsarukyan was right there at UFC 326, healthy and ready to go, and the UFC still didn't book him against Topuria, with an interim belt or without one. Ronda Rousey also chimed in and reportedly said Dana knows the White House card fell short of expectations and that she can guarantee he's not happy with it either. Helwani also reported the UFC may add one more fight to the card before it's finalized. And this one's quick, but it made the rounds on social media. A fan lost $1,000 betting on Max Holloway to beat Charles Oliveira at UFC 326. The video of his reaction went viral, and honestly, you felt it. The guy was devastated. Look, Holloway was the favorite going in. A lot of people expected him to win on the feet. But Oliveira came in with a completely new dimension to his game, and the grappling was simply too much. If you had money on Max, you're not alone. But the lesson here is the same one it always is in MMA. Anything can happen. The betting favorite doesn't always win. And if a guy like Charles Oliveira tells you he's evolved, you should probably believe him. And now we get to the story that ties so much of this together. According to multiple reports, including from Spain's Marca, and later backed by Ilia Topuria's manager Malki Kawa, the original plan for the White House main event on June 14th was Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev for the welterweight title. That would have been the number 1 pound for pound versus the number 2, and Topuria's chance at becoming the first 3-division champion in UFC history. Let me translate what that means. This was supposed to be the biggest fight the UFC could make in all of 2026. Potentially one of the biggest fights in UFC history, period. According to Kawa, the UFC contacted Topuria's camp mid-last week and offered him a choice between fighting Islam or Gaethje. Topuria chose Islam without hesitation. The negotiations reportedly took place between Friday night and Saturday morning. And then, according to Topuria, when he woke up the next day, Islam was suddenly injured. A hand injury. And Justin Gaethje, who just 2 days earlier had been told he was definitely not on the card, was now the replacement. Now here's where the contradictions get loud. At the UFC 326 post-fight press conference, Dana White flatly denied that Islam versus Ilia was ever a real fight. He said it was never Islam versus Topuria and that people shouldn't worry about what fights are being made.
It was going to be Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev, and that fight fell apart on Friday. Well, Justin Gaethje also said he was told Thursday he wasn't on the card, and then on Friday he was.
That is true.
So what happened with Islam, I guess? Because you know how fans are, a lot of them.
That's not true, I said.
Sure. So
it was never Islam versus...
He confirmed Islam has hand issues, but said neither Topuria nor Gaethje was originally supposed to be on the card. He said the fight that fell through happened at the Power Slap event on Friday night, and the matchmakers were up until 9 in the morning putting the card together. But then Topuria came out on Tuesday with a statement on X that directly challenges that narrative. Ilia said once again Islam came up with an excuse, this time an injury. He said he always knew he'd be part of the White House event, even when the UFC told him at one point they wouldn't count on him. He said when they finally confirmed he was on the card, they mentioned Islam first, and he didn't hesitate for a second. According to Topuria, the card was supposed to be announced the next day, and when he woke up, Islam had gotten injured and Gaethje appeared. Topuria then aimed directly at both Makhachev and his manager, Ali Abdelaziz. He said Gaethje will be the latest person to pay for Islam's escape. He told Gaethje to expect a quick night and said when he wakes up everything will already be over. Islam fired right back. He accused Topuria of being the one who chickened out and said Topuria can cover his cowardice with nasty tweets. Islam also went after Topuria's management, saying his manager doesn't have to ask for billions and that they'll do the fight for free. Meanwhile, Kawa went on record clarifying that while the UFC did discuss the Makhachev fight with Topuria's team, no concrete agreement was ever finalized. He said they were focused on getting the Islam fight, but there was no done deal that fell apart. Gaethje also backed up the chaotic timeline, confirming he was told on Thursday he was definitely not fighting, then got a call Friday saying he might be on the card and didn't get final confirmation until Saturday night. Now separately, each of these stories is interesting on its own. Dana contradicting Topuria's timeline, Dana dismissing Jones while reportedly negotiating with him days earlier, Ariel Helwani confirming negotiations happened with both Jones and McGregor, Gaethje confirming he was a last-minute addition, fighters publicly questioning the promotion's honesty, but when you put them all together, they tell you everything about where the UFC is right now. The Freedom 250 card that was supposed to be the greatest event in UFC history has become the most politically charged card in UFC history, and it hasn't even happened yet.